Did you know that on the few occasions that Nelson Mandela would drink alcohol, he would often request a bottle of Klein Constantia's Vin de Constance, which is a very famous sweet wine that they produce. Interestingly enough, this wine, Vin de Constance, was also a big favorite of the French General Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, it always seemed to amuse Nelson Mandela that he shared his wine taste with the great General Napoleon, but he shared his name with Napoleon's great rival, Horatio Nelson. But Vin de Constance was not Nelson's only attraction to the wine ward of Constantia. He was in fact also friends with the Mennel family, who at the time owned Glendirk Estate, and he would visit Glendirk Estate, sometimes staying a few days, and oft stroll through the vineyards on those crisp Constantia mornings. Now, this little jaunt down memory lane was triggered by the fact that today's hand drink solar wine of the day is in fact Glendirk Sauvignon Blanc 2017. Glendirk as an estate was originally part of the land granted to Simon van der Stel in 1685, which was then just called Constantia. But later on in its history, it came to be owned by Sir Max Michaelis, the man after whom the University of Cape Town's Fine Art Faculty was named. Later on in its history, it was owned by Sir Max's son, the artist Cecil Michaelis. And Cecil Michaelis also donated portions of his Newlands property to the University of Cape Town, which then became the Montebello Design Centre. So there's this rich connection between Glendirk, Constantia, and the arts in Cape Town. But while the art history might be fascinating, what is probably more relevant is the vineyards on Glendirk. Winemaker Matt Day from Klein Constantia tells me that there are just short of 10 blocks of vineyards on the estate, and while there are a few different cultivars dotted around, the vast majority of these vineyards are made up with Sauvignon Blanc. The estate's vineyards were originally established by the viticultural team at Baten Verwachting. Baten Verwachting is another prominent Constantia estate, but as of today, the fact that Rick Mennel, the current owner of Glendirk, is also on Klein Constantia's board of directors means that the responsibility of getting the fruit from the vines to the Klein Constantia cellar falls to Klein Constantia each vintage. Now, the good news for Sauvignon lovers is that this wine is vinified by one of South Africa's most prominent and respected Sauvignon specialists, winemaker Matt Day. Even better news for oak lovers is that this is a wooded Sauvignon Blanc that sees at least 9 months in French oak barrels. And in fact, the parcels that were chosen for this wine, because it's kind of a reserve select, were chosen specifically for their ability to stand up to the oak treatment. So when we get into the glass and give this guy a sniff, well, we really do get a lovely, generous mix of fruit and spices and herbs. At the middle is this undeniably rich core, which is a kind of blend of tropical marula and some mango, some marmalade notes. Then kind of littered over the top of that are some oak-inspired, really lovely hints of nutmeg, and even a little bit of quite an interesting, almost savory salted caramel type note. Perhaps the parts of the aroma that I love the most come from the fact that this Sauvignon is already 7 years old, and so it's had a little bit of time in bottle to develop some age notes or tertiary notes, which is not something that Sauvignon gets a chance to do very often. So in there, with the fruit core and the oak spice, there's also some salted nuts and even a touch of lanolin, like sheep's wool. Now, when we take a sip, well, the concentration on the palate is really quite impressive. And this makes sense because apparently the yields on these vines are really quite low, and so they deliver more concentrated fruit. But also what you notice is that the wine itself is full of some quite ripe fruit. And if you look at the alcohol level on the bottle, it is 14.2%. So again, I guess the technicals back up what we're tasting in the wine. But as we hinted on the nose, on the palate, it's the same. This fruit ranges from tropical marula, mango to citrus, even a little bit of peach as well. Over and above the fruit, there's also a fascinating note that I guess I'd describe as toast with salted farm butter. Yes, if we were trying to pinpoint that, I mean, that could have been triggered by a combination of oak and the fact that there was quite a lot of lees contact and the fact that it was matured in barrel, and all of those things would come together to form this creamy, dairy-like salted butter note with toast underneath it. But it doesn't matter what triggered it, the fact is it's quite delicious. Now, that's all we have time for today, but if you have any more questions about the history of Constantia or Sauvignon Blanc or farm butter, leave the comments on the website and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. If you enjoyed the video, then support us on Patreon to help us make more of these videos. and subscribe to the Henrik Solar YouTube channel, because we publish at least 6 videos each month that talk about wine science, wine history, unusual cultivars, and some of the rising winemaking stars that are coming out of the dynamic South African winelands.